Since it was first discovered to be the highest place on Earth in 1852, man has sought to stand on top of Mount Everest. 50 years ago, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first people to summit it. 40 years ago, Jim Whittaker became the first American to do the same. Now, OLN brings you another Everest first, the first complete televised summit attempt. Today is the first step in a journey as 4 climbers and their guide Chris Warner try and tackle Mount Everest and quite possibly stand on top of the world. It began 8 months ago as 50 athletes started a quest to become one of the few with an opportunity to summit Mount Everest. They battled around the globe, over the Rocky Mountains, across the Kalahari Desert in Africa, through the jungles of Costa Rica, and on the frozen tundra of Iceland. A select crew emerged, the most qualified, the best teammates, the strongest of mind and body. Colleen Inken from Alma, Colorado. Jesse Rickard from Gunnison, Colorado. Petite Hinson from Three Rivers, California. And Ted Mann from Aspen, Colorado. But today they begin a journey of another sort. No longer will they battle each other. Now they will tackle a mountain. And not just any mountain. This is Everest. Now they must work as a team and look deep within themselves to find the strength and the passion to climb in the rarefied air of the highest mountain in the world. Today, the grand finale of Global Extremes Mount Everest begins. Life is different at 29,000 feet. The wind and sun leaving their mark on the top of the world. A breathtaking sight from our base camp studio at the foot of the Rongbuk Glacier on the north side of Everest. Hi everybody, I'm Craig Hummer here in Everest Base Camp, and to say conditions are extreme is an understatement. For days this storm has wreaked havoc on the OLN crew and other camps. Based on our geographic location, storms like these can move in quickly and without warning. Mount Everest stands in the eastern part of the Himalayan range and sits at 29,035 feet. No other place on Earth is higher. It is bordered by 2 countries, Tibet to the north and Nepal to the south. Joining me throughout my time here on Everest is world-renowned climber and my co-host, Conrad Anker. Now, Conrad, you were here in Tibet on the north side of Everest in '99. Was the wind ever this bad?
In that time in '99, we never saw a storm like this. What we have here is a low pressure in the Bay of Bengal, which has pulled the jet stream right down onto Mount Everest. We've seen mass destruction of tents all around. I can't believe this is going on.
Well, for more on the conditions, we're going to go now to the third member of our broadcast team, Pete Whittaker. He's up on the mountain.
Pete Whittaker at the North Col, 23,000 feet. You see the destruction that's occurred up here from this windstorm. Tents completely wiped out. These are tents that climbers had hoped to come up and occupy on their summit bed. It's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding that's going to need to be done. 2 more camps above here can be completely wiped out. Nobody's been up there yet. Complete devastation here at the North Col. 23,000 feet on Mount Everest.
Thanks, Pete. Well, Conrad will obviously get reports from Pete throughout our expedition. Right now, let's talk a little bit about the route our climbers are going to take.
Our climbers will be ascending the classic route on the north side of Mount Everest. It was first pioneered in 1921, 22, and 24 by the English expeditions. The first ascent of this route was made in 1960 by the Chinese. This is considered to be the classic route on the north side of Mount Everest. Viewed here in a computer-animated map, only a dream 50 years ago, the route begins at the Rongbuk Glacier Base Camp. Situated at 17,000 feet, the summit is still 12,000 feet higher and 12 miles distant. Our climbers trek up the east fork of the Rongbuk Glacier, spending 1 night at the interim camp for acclimatization. Hiking on the latter moraine, the climbers then pass under the summit of Changse, the northern peak of Everest. Situated at 21,000 feet and supplied by yaks, Advanced Base Camp is the beginning of the climbing route. Directly above ABC looms the North Col, which is reached by an arduous climb up the Serac-studded glacier. From the North Col, the climbers ascend the North Ridge. At the end of a long ice ramp, Camp 2 is situated. A windy and exposed location, Camp 2 is a precursor to the following two camps, 3 and 4. From Camp 4, at 27,230 feet, our climbers will make their summit bid, a technically demanding and committing day via the daunting first step and vertical second step to reach the summit of Mount Everest at 29,035 feet.
That's it for now from Everest Base Camp. Let's send it back to the OLN studios.
Thanks, guys, and good evening to you from a much, much warmer location. I'm Kirsten Gum, and I will be anchoring our coverage from here in the States tonight. And to my left, I am very happy to be joined by Everest veteran climber Pete Athens. Pete, thank you for being here with me tonight.
It's a privilege.
Now, I must say, you are one of the best. You have summited 7 times. You have led 15 expeditions. You know better than anybody how important weather conditions can be. You just saw the gnarly weather our athletes faced. How does that affect a climber mentally?
They need to have a good expectation of what they're going to really find on their summit bid. They need to see how strong the winds can be, how to gauge their pacing, and to decide whether they're going to continue or whether they're going to withdraw. So this is an important time.
All right, that was a few days ago, and it seems like the weather is improving a little bit. You know, realistically, to have a realistic shot at the summit, how big of a window do you look for?
Realistically, the climbers will need about 3 to 5 days of good weather, because once you get above the North Col, you're really on the northeast ridge, which almost cuts that wind like a big knife, and you need to have significantly diminished winds.
Well, fortunately for our OLN crew and for our Global Extreme athletes, the weather is improving. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the weather is supposed to be like for the next couple of days. It looks like strong winds, but those will diminish sometime between Monday and Wednesday. Still lack of visibility because of blowing snow. What do you make of all this?
The important thing to see is that the winds are dropping. That's the most critical number.
Now, so if the weather window does open up, we could see a summit attempt as early as next Monday on the 19th.
Well, let's think positively, yes.
Yeah, that's if everything goes right. Of course, stay tuned to OLN all week for updates on when our climbers will get a chance to go. Well, coming up next, we go back out to base camp for a closer look at our 4 Global Extremes athletes and hear from them directly as they prepare for the climb of a lifetime. We're back in a moment.
Known by many names such as Chumulungma, goddess, mother of the earth, Sagarmatha, or the most common name, Mount Everest. However you refer to her, the goal is the same, to stand on the summit at 29,035 feet. Hello again, everyone. Craig Hummer along with my co-host Conrad Anker. And Conrad, we talked earlier in the show about how this wind has wreaked havoc, but certainly another major obstacle of Everest is acclimatization.
Due to the extreme altitude of Mount Everest, the biggest goal for the climbers is to acclimatize well. If they're not acclimatized, the summit is not an option. We're going to follow our acclimatization track of our climbers. Let's check in with them now.
I don't think the steep part's coming for quite a while.
It's like I'm focusing on each step, and I look up, and there's this magnitude of nature surrounding me, so pretty amazing.
This is great. This is pretty thrilling. We're definitely thinking it through and using our common sense, and we're having a good day.
Pretty amazing looking down at where I started. I guess this is what they mean literally by breathtaking views. Good job. I just, I'm not used to dealing with probably 50% oxygen saturation.
50. Maybe 40. You know, everybody's strong. Everyone's
as fast today, but I think I saw about 3 people at Everest summit strength in them. I'm curious to see what happens the next couple of little pushes. I'm not absolutely convinced that all 5 can make it at this point.
Well, Conrad, Chris Warner definitely had his crystal ball working, because the big news from OLN Base Camp, one climber will not be going on. He will not attempt the summit. That is Troy Henkels from Eagle River, Alaska. We had a chance to talk with him about his decision.
I have no doubt that I could push myself mentally very hard, push my physical side, and get quite a ways up Mount Everest. My concerns are getting back down safely. And for me, it's not worth the risk to try to get up there just for the sake of hitting the peak and putting myself possibly in danger, as well as the team, and not being able to get back down. So for those reasons, it's time for me to go home.
Well, Conrad, there's no question that was a tough decision for Troy. You've had to make those types of decisions in the past. What do you think was going through his mind?
Everest is a big and intimidating mountain. If you're unsure of yourself, it's better to make those decisions low on the mountain rather than up high. I fully respect Troy's decision.
And back here at the OLN studios, Pete Athens, I'm sure you've had to make some of those decisions, those same decisions.
Absolutely. It's one that confronts us all the time when we're climbing at high altitude. You could see that the climbers were pacing themselves well. They were feeling happy in between, but obviously you don't want to be on the mountain with someone who feels like they're not 100% committed to being there for whatever reason that is, whether that's psychological or whether that's physical.
Let's talk about acclimatization. I mean, obviously we heard the heavy breathing, that's to be expected, but what does it really feel like?
Boy, being up at high altitude, when you arrive at the Rongbuk area at first, you feel very lightheaded. Your drive to breathe is very strong. What normally would be very easy for you to do, like going up a simple slope, might be really difficult. You might be breathing really heavily. The good news is that with repeated exposure and with repeated forays on the mountain, each time you go up, you just keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Now, they also have a lot of time at base camp. I would think during that time, I mean, they must go through every situation. Is that a good thing in your mind?
Absolutely. It's important to just keep pushing the elevation pocket, but always withdraw and rest. So you've heard the old adage, climb high, sleep low. So you're just pushing the altitude envelope, but then you're withdrawing and resting, rehydrating, getting good rest, getting good nutrition, and then going up to the next level, and then withdrawing again. And then finally, after 3 or 4 forays on the mountain, then you're ready to go to the summit.
Pete, do you ever get scared before a summit attempt?
Well, fear is for me, it's an adjunct to respect and humility, because Everest is such a huge peak and obviously has incredible destructive powers at certainly in its arsenal. So it's important to approach the peak with humility, with respect, and to be a little fearful. I think it gives you that edge, so that you're always looking, you're never feeling too confident, you're never feeling too cavalier, you're always focusing on what you're doing every moment.
Good advice from one of the best. Well, when we return, we will be going back to Everest, where Craig Hummer and Conrad Anker will be inside our base camp studio. And we'll look at the history of Everest.
The worldwide odyssey of global extremes continues, and every step of the way, we've been supported by the all-new Toyota 4Runner. Now, Conrad, in this era of professional guiding, I have to think it's important not only to pick the right organization, but the right expedition leader.
Most certainly. Summit Day is more than just being there at that point. You need impeccable planning, good logistics, and a cool attitude, all attributes that our leader, Russell Bryce, embodies.
Well, you mentioned Russell. Let's go back up on the mountain and join Peter Whitaker, who is standing by with our king of the mountain, Russell Bryce, and see just what the latest storm was like.
So Russell, I was up here a few days ago for this weather event, fairly substantial, but I haven't been on this side or on Everest in 14 years. You've been here every year for the last 14. What was your read on this storm?
It's a pretty severe storm for sure. Strong winds is always debilitating on an expedition. But you know, in '88 we had 10 days of 100-mile-an-hour winds like this.
Really?
And we're the only expedition here as well, so there's no support and things like that. But you know, it's we've got 150-something tents, and out of that 150 tents that are standing here, we've probably got 8 or 9 tents damaged, and we have to replace them. We have to start again. that's normal. That's expedition life.
So it sounds like prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Craig, back to you.
Thanks, Pete. Well, Russell has been coming here for years, and it's been over 150 years since Everest was first recognized. Let's take a look at what went into discovering the world's highest mountain.
The year was 1852. British territories and possessions were scattered over so many time zones of the globe that the sun, it was said, never set on the British Empire. The Great Trigonometric Survey of India was in full swing under the leadership of Surveyor General Sir Andrew Wall. One day, a young mathematician from Calcutta by the name of Radhanath Sikdar brought Sir Andrew some startling news. He had just compiled the survey data on Peak 15, an enormous mountain that lay just on the Nepal-Tibet border in the Himalaya. When he had finished the math, however, he realized that Peak 15 was the highest point on the planet. Sir Andrew now had to bestow an official name upon the mountain. At the time, it was a policy to make use of local names. The Nepalese called it Sagarmatha, goddess of the sky. But Sir Andrew must have felt that a more British appellation was in order, so he named it after his predecessor, Sir George Everest. Perhaps he thought it merely a technicality that this tallest peak on Earth had not found its way directly into the British Empire, and that a proper British name could go a long way to correcting that trivial oversight. The accuracy of Sikdar's calculations was incredible. His data came from a series of triangulations, that is, measurements of the mountain from different locations, none closer than 90 miles, each involving the use of a 24-inch theodolite, a telescopic instrument for measuring angles. Current technology utilizing the GPS satellite system puts Everest's height at 29,035 feet, a difference of only 33 feet. That puts Sikdar's 1852 estimate off by a measly 1/10 of 1%.
Whatever you call the world's highest mountain, it has been a goal of climbers for close to 100 years. Right now, we're going to take a break, so let's send it back to OLN Studios in Connecticut and Pete Athens and Kirsten Gum.
All right, Craig, thank you so much. Some incredible images from Mount Everest Base Camp. Tonight, as we preview the Global Extremes Summit attempt, we'd like to hear from you. A little later in the show, we'll be taking your phone calls live. If you have any questions for our Mount Everest expert, Pete Athens, please give us a call. The number is 1-866-OLN-EXEV. That's 1-866-656-3938. Or you can email your questions to globalextremes@olntv.com. Pete, we heard from Russell Bryce and Peter Whitaker earlier when they were assessing the damage from the recent storms, and I heard Russell say, hey, it was bad, but I've seen much worse. What about your experiences with the weather? How bad can it get?
Well, my experiences on Everest have taught me that you really need to expect the unexpected. You can have incredibly benign conditions, but anytime you're climbing at these extreme elevations, which are roughly the same that most jet airliners fly at, you can have extreme winds in excess of 100 miles per hour for days on end, as Russell was indicating. It can be life-threatening.
Let's talk about our athletes, our finalists. They seem pretty prepared and pretty confident. What's your take?
They're confident. It's good to approach the mountain calmly and confidently, but also to show some respect, because ultimately our powers as human beings are puny by comparison to the force that Everest can unleash upon us.
Yes, definitely so. And Pete, I know you have stories and a lot of information. I just want to remind our viewers that we will be taking phone calls live, and you will answer any questions they have, at least to your ability.
I'll do my best.
Right. All right, when we come back, we head back out on the mountain with Craig Hummer and Conrad Anker at base camp as we take an in-depth look at the men who cleared the path to the top 50 years ago. We're back in a moment.
Welcome back to Global Extremes Mount Everest. Craig Hummer along with Conrad Anker. And Conrad, we're a couple weeks away from the 50th anniversary of the first ascent of Mount Everest, and that is a milestone that means a lot to a lot of people.
Most certainly, Everest is the ultimate symbol of human endeavor. It was in 1953 on May 29th that Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay stood on top of the world. This is one of the hallmarks of the golden age of exploration. This included the South Pole, the North Pole, and then 16 years after Mount Everest, landing on the moon. To this day, Everest still remains the penultimate human challenge. Craig?
Well, you are good with your dates, my friend. And speaking of dates, let's join OLN's historian Sam Posey and take another look at that historic first ascent.
On May 26, 1953, Tom Bourdillon and Charles Evans pushed beyond the Swiss high point to the south summit of Mount Everest at 28,750 feet, the highest place on the planet anyone had ever been to that point. Isn't it amazing what a difference just 300 vertical feet can make? 3 days later, Ed Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed those final 300 feet into history. But this is not just the story of 2 men or even 4. Since 1852, when Peak 15 was first identified as the highest point on Earth, man has sought to climb it. In 1953, an expedition led by Colonel John Hunt set out to succeed where others had failed. Hunt brought military mentality to an otherwise sporting pursuit. 350 porters hauled equipment for his war with the mountain. Heading up the South Col route they pioneered in 1951 and the Swiss built on in 1952, they battled through the Khumbu icefall, a perpetually shifting hazard of snow and ice, which had halted them in 1951. Along the arduous western Khum, up the Lhotse face and onto the South Col, a daunting journey that took almost 2 months. A key addition to the British team was Tenzing Norgay, who climbed with the Swiss the year before and was clearly one of the strongest climbing Sherpas of the era. At 6 a.m. on May 29, 1953, Kiwi Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing Norgay climbed out of their tents, loaded their 30-pound oxygen sets on their backs, and headed up the mountain.
I can remember when Tenzing and I were climbing up the long, steep slope to the south summit. It was very soft snow. To me, it seemed a little bit on the dangerous side for a potential avalanche danger. I turned to Tenzing and I said to him, "Well, what do you think of it, Tenzing?" And Tenzing said, well, he didn't like it very much. And I said, will we carry on by this route? And Tenzing just thought for a moment, and he said, just as you like. So we carried on. I mean, I led down onto the ridge, and I cut steps all the way along the ridge until halfway along. There was an abrupt section, a rock step, and at 29,000 feet nearly, this did look rather formidable. But then I noticed on the right-hand side, between the rock and the ice corners hanging out over the face, there was a narrow crack where the ice was breaking away from the rock. And the crack looked just large enough for me to crawl inside. So I crawled inside it, and then I wriggled and jammed my way up and reached the top of the step. And it was then, for the first time on the whole expedition, that I was absolutely confident that we were going to get to the top. Actually, that is now called the Hillary step, but because of the fact, I guess, that I was the first to climb it. You know, so many expeditions had tried to climb the mountain, and pretty good expeditions too, but they had not been able to climb that last little stretch and get to the summit. But here, Tenzing and I were on top. That was a very satisfying moment. I think in many ways, Tenzing was almost more emotional than I was. I, in sort of Western fashion, reached out my hand to shake him by the hand, but that wasn't good enough for him. He threw his arms around my shoulders and gave me a hug, and I gave him a hug too.
Hillary and Tenzing stood on top of the world, the first people ever to summit Mount Everest.
They were coming down, moving pretty slowly, and I went out and sat down on the floor and you know, filled the glasses, the drink for them, and I said to Ed, well, how did you get on? Literally not with a lot of emotion. And Ed said, no, we climbed up. And of course the phrase is a very New Zealand one of, we knocked the bastard off.
The rest of the expedition had waited further down the mountain. George led the way into Camp 4 with a thumbs up. jubilation and hugs all around. The British team had done it. They had climbed Mount Everest. On June 2nd, the BBC proclaimed the news to the world.
Mount Everest has been conquered by members of the British expedition. The news reached London in a message to the Times from Colonel H.C.J. Hunt, the expedition's leader. It said that Mr. E.P. Hillary, a New Zealander, and Tenzing Bhutia, a Sherpa, had reached the summit last Friday, May 29th.
32 years after the British first approached the slopes of Chumulunga on their 9th expedition on the mountain, they had their moment, just as planned in conjunction with the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II.
They were the first, and many have followed. A lot has changed in the 50 years since they stood on the summit, but a couple things have remained the same. To reach the top, you still need to put one foot in front of the other, and you still need an adventurous spirit. One of our climbers who embodies that spirit is Petite Pinson. We talked to her about the journey.
I'm definitely someone who tries to live in the moment, and the journey is more than anything. It's not just the summit. But I'm also someone who thinks there's two choices, yes or no, and I'm not going to sit here and say, no, I don't see myself standing on the summit. Yes, I do, and I'll go as far as I feel confident and safe and all these things. I'm definitely going to be pushing my limits physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that, and that's something I enjoy doing, and this is more than I've ever done. So, yes, I see myself there, and more so, I see myself back here and back home with people I love.
When we return, we'll have more from our studio here at the base camp of Mount Everest, as well as our studios in Connecticut. Stay with us. There's more Global Extremes after this.
Welcome back to Global Extremes Mount Everest. I'm Kirsten Gum. Now, before we head back out to base camp, we want to remind you of the phone number to call with your questions. That it is 1-866-OLN-EXEV. And joining us now in the studio is a familiar face for a lot of you, Eric Kapitulik. He is one of our Global Extremes athletes. Now, lucky for us, he didn't make it to the finale, but seriously, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me here tonight, Kirsten.
Please tell me honestly, what was life like during your Global Extremes experience?
Sure. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't start by thanking the Marine Corps for allowing me to participate. Second, I'd like to thank OLN for providing such a great adventure. The entire 5 months was such a great experience, and although I'm very disappointed in how it ended for me, as you so eloquently pointed out, Kirsten, yes. It was still a great adventure, and it's something I was privileged to be part of.
Real quickly, you spent months with our 4 finalists. I mean, give me your take on their personalities and their abilities.
Sure, but I guess a 30-second synopsis here of each athlete who's left climbing. Colleen is just, in a word, I guess, motherly. And she's always going to take care of the person on her left and her right, which I guess is a good thing, being that she's a ER nurse. That's certainly something she needs.
Petite?
Petite is just a great person. She's going to make any team better, whether that be by her rapping skills or by her mental and physical toughness. Ted is just solid and really a guy who I would feel great about having on the mountain with me or singing a foxhole with me. And Jesse and I are different people, and over the course of the 5 months, I think early on we sort of realized that we were different people, and so I don't know a whole lot about Jesse. Can't really comment on him.
Well, thank you for being honest too. I really enjoy your input and talking to you about the shows, because I watched them very closely and enjoyed all of them. Right now, we are going to go ahead and take some emails here that we had sent into the studio. Our first one says, so in the attempt to scale Everest, would EPO be of any benefit? And that's from Betsy Baker. Pete, this is directed to you. First, explain what is EPO and what do you think?
Betsy, that's a great question. EPO essentially is a blood tonifier, and what it does is enables your blood to carry oxygen to your extremities and to your essential organs much more effectively, efficiently, and it allows you to perform quite a bit better. EPO is obviously used illegally in a number of sports.
Right.
I don't know of any athletes in the mountains who have actually used it. Theoretically, it could be a great enhancement. The problem is we never know really what the downside to these things are, and the theory oftentimes in practice doesn't always live up to the expectations.
That's a very good point. Let's go to the next email. Our next email question: at the higher altitudes, why doesn't the team use any snow caves or quincies? And that is from Daniel. Again, Pete, help us out here.
It would have been a great opportunity to be able to actually dig snow caves and to create quincies or to be tunneling into snow banks. Unfortunately, probably the snow depth is the biggest issue up there at the moment, and it's you know, they may only have a meter of snow up there, and it's really difficult to tunnel into, to make an igloo or to make a quincy with only that marginal snow depth, and the snow is also not a very good consistency to hold its shape.
All right, good answers there. Unfortunately, we were having some technical difficulties, and so we were not able to answer your phone calls. But I got to tell you right now, we are out of time, but we will continue to take your calls and emails on Summit Day. So please keep sending those emails and keep that phone number handy. We would love to talk to you on Summit Day. Right now, it is time to head back to base camp in the Rongbuk Valley and our colleagues Craig Hummer and Conrad Anker. Guys?
Thanks, Kirsten. To the left of your screen, you're looking at a shot of the Northeast Ridge, a place our climbers hope to be in a few short days. Conrad, historically speaking, the first ascent of Everest was on the south side. Our climbers, however, will be going on the north side, and on that side there are some technical challenges.
Certainly. The north side route is far more committing, and this is due to the fact that Summit Day, one climbs horizontally more than vertically. The first challenge is the first step. There's a 110-foot limestone cliff band on the northeast ridge. If the climbers get over this, they're looking in pretty good shape to get to the second step. The terrain in between the two, though, is very intimidating.
You said it about the elevation. That was 670 feet in elevation. Now, you know the second step very well. How tough is it going to be for the climbers?
The second step is very challenging, the last 15 feet of which are overhanging. The Chinese installed a ladder there in 1975. If they get to the top of the second step, they're pretty close to the summit, but it's still a long ways to go.
And you have said that getting to the summit is only half the battle.
Exactly. A successful ascent means getting back down safe and sound to base camp and sharing that experience with your friends.
And how long is it going to take for them to get from Camp 4 to the summit?
In good conditions, 7.5 to 9 hours, but things can change. This is Mount Everest.
All right, well, right now, let's check in with the third member of our broadcast team, Pete Whitaker. He has some assessment, or some new assessment, on the recent storm damage.
Craig, Conrad, a couple days ago, 100-mile-an-hour winds were ripping across the north ridge of Mount Everest. In fact, our Camp 2 got hit pretty hard at 24,700 feet. I was at ABC watching sleeping bags swirling in the air, tents being ripped. We even watched 2 or 3 oxygen bottles slide all the way from our camp down here to the East Rongbuk Glacier. Today, we're looking around for gear. Obviously, anything that we can find will help expeditions as they push up and try and establish camps higher on the mountain. Now, the good thing was that there were no climbers up there on the ridge, just equipment, and that's what we're looking for today. Back to you guys at the studio.
Thanks, Peter. Well, it makes me glad I'm down here at base camp. And speaking of base camp, it's always a multinational experience. One day you can go see the French, another day you can go see the Russians. Let's take a look now at some of the different expeditions we have here.
This year in 2003, base camp, frankly, is pretty busy. There's a lot of expeditions, a lot of people, and that's what Mount Everest is all about these days. This is an international mountain. You come here, you meet people from all over the world, many different expedition teams, all brought together by one goal of climbing the world's highest peak.
My name is Zadi Al-Rifai. I'm 36 years old and from Kuwait. This is my second attempt to climb Everest, and if successful, I hope I will be the first Kuwaiti and Arab to summit Everest, inshallah, as we say.
I'm Craig John from Freeport, Maine. I work for International Mountain Guides, and I'm the leader of this Everest expedition here. I summited here. This is my 4th trip to Everest, my 10th Himalayan trip altogether, and I summited here on May 25th, 1998.
Hi, I'm Jess Ross Kelly. I'm from Spokane, Washington, and I'm here climbing with my dad, John Ross Kelly. If I climb Mount Everest successfully, I'll be the youngest American.
It's our dream to realize live broadcasting the whole event from the ABC camp to the summit.
This is our TV person drill.
Hi, I'm Mike Merle from Aspen, Colorado.
I'm Steve Merle from Aspen, Colorado.
And I'm Jim Kyle from Denver, Colorado. We've come to Mount Everest to attempt to climb it without oxygen.
Without Sherpa support. This is our first time here, and we're coming just to touch the mountain and see what it's all about.
And we're skiers, so we're going to give it a whirl on skis.
You almost have to be multilingual to spend your time here at base camp, but it is a great way to spend time as we all wait for that perfect weather window. Stay with us because when we return, we have more from our Everest base camp here on the north side of Everest. More global extremes after this. Inside this tent is our base camp studio where we've been working for the past few weeks. The Toyota 4Runners have worked with us over the past 6 months, helping make global extremes a reality. Conrad, it's hard enough to climb the mountain, but to do it with cameras and equipment from base camp must be an arduous undertaking.
This is a huge responsibility for our high-altitude camera team. For all of the team, they've summited before. In addition to keeping their own bodies and gear in order, they need to keep an eye out on our climbers.
Well, this is unprecedented coverage on OLN. The summit bid will be covered from beginning to end. We have our cameras here at base camp as well as cameras at Camp 1, where Pete Whitaker is reporting along with expedition leader Russell Bryce. 3 climbing cameramen will provide footage of the climbers every step of the way. One of the climbers we'll be following every step of the way is Colleen Inken. When she was at base camp, we had a chance to talk to her about what her biggest concern was when it comes to Everest.
My biggest concern is probably just my technical ability. I feel confident that I can get to Camp 4. Just the way that we've been training, we've been pacing ourselves. You know, you can take all day if you want to get to a camp, or not all day, but you want to get there before 3 or 4. But you know, you could go slow, you can pace yourself, and summit day is just it's a whole new world. I mean, it's like 16, 18 hours. It's the most technical day. It's the most stressful day. It's the only day that we're carrying oxygen with us, and it's just the difference in what we've been doing to train for the summit and the actual summit day. I mean, to me, there's just no comparison.
We've got more global extremes coming to you live from Mount Everest right after this. Stay with us. We'll have some final thoughts from Peter Whitaker and from the gang at the studios in Connecticut.
The Outdoor Life Network cordially invites you to the nastiest, most inhospitable place on Earth. For the last 4 months, the global extremists have crisscrossed the planet to reach their ultimate challenge. This month, the final 4 athletes have a chance to summit Mount Everest, and OLN will bring it to you live. Global Extremes Mount Everest 4Runners of Adventure, presented by Toyota. Date and time based on weather. Watch OLN for summit updates.
Welcome back to our Everest Base Camp studio. Craig Hummer along with Conrad Anker. Now, Conrad, Everest is the same mountain it was 50 years ago, but judging off of the number of ascents over the past 10 years, Everest has become very popular.
In 1994, 51 climbers reached the summit of Everest. In 2001, 182 climbers made it to the top of the world, an amount equal to all the ascents of the first 22 years.
All right, well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about our climbers. First, the women. How do you rate their chances?
I give both of them a good chance. Petite is on a spiritual journey. I like that. Colleen is very calm and collected, which is also very good. If they make it, they will be the 12th and 13th American women to make it to the top of the world.
Now, looking at the men, Jesse Rickert and Ted Mann, how would you rate them?
Obviously, Ted is strong, tough as nails. He's made it through 5 months of global extremes. And Jesse, well, he's just flat out motivated.
All right, well, let's go up one last time on the mountain to our reporter, Pete Whitaker, for some final thoughts.
The situation up here has improved dramatically. 4 days ago, I was hanging on for my life at Advanced Base Camp, pulling rocks into my tent to make sure I wasn't blown off the mountain. And yet we're sitting here looking really, really good. All the camps have been rebuilt down below, and the Sherpa are heading up to the North Col to do the same. Tomorrow, they're headed up to Camp 2, 24,700 feet. We're actually getting ahead of schedule. Without the Sherpa's help, it would be impossible. I'm amazed at how hard they work. With the weather cooperating, and a few other things going our way, we could be in a situation where we're going for the summit about a week from now. Back to you at base camp.
Thanks, Pete. Good news and great job today. We'll look forward to more reports on Summit Day. Right now, let's throw it back to OLN Studios in the U.S. for some final thoughts from Everest veteran Pete Athens and Kirsten Gum.
Thanks, Craig and Conrad. We're only days away, hopefully, for a summit attempt for our Global Extremes athletes. Pete, do you think they're prepared enough? Your final thoughts here.
Well, it's difficult to say at this point. I think that they've done their forays on the mountain. Their acclimatization is nearing its completion. Not knowing inside their minds what's going on there, it's difficult to say, but I'm hopeful that they're taking that time to look inside as well as they're thinking about all of their physical training, and that it'll all come together for them when the winds drop.
Now, you saw a video of them climbing. Does anything strike you odd, or was it pretty much what you should be expecting right now?
It struck me that they were doing everything right, that they looked great. Most importantly, they looked like they were enjoying themselves, and if you can do that at extreme altitude, you're probably well on your way to being well acclimated, well prepared to deal with the challenge of Everest.
Eric, what about you? You know these 4 finalists very well personally. What do you think their chances are?
Well, I think that all 4 as individuals have great chances of reaching the top of the highest peak in the world, and I think that any one of the 4, based on their mental and physical toughness, can reach that point. I certainly wish all 4 of them the best of luck to make it not as individuals but as a team of 4.
And I'm with you. You know, I have never been to Mount Everest myself, so it's hard for me to say if I think they will make it to the top. But, you know, after talking with both of you, Pete, you especially, it really seems like the mountain decides who makes it to the top, and being in physical and mental shape is only part of it. But I do wish all 4 of our finalists the very, very best. And that's going to do it for us here in the comfort of the studio. I do thank you for joining us and hope you will again on Summit Day. We could now have that next week. When we come back, Craig and Conrad will be back to wrap up things. Stay with us.
Cold, real time. 50 years ago, Hillary and Norgate climbed to the top of the world. In honor of their great adventure, OLN presents Global Extremes, live from Mount Everest. Danger lurks on every ridge. Oxygen slowly ticks away as the climbers realize this is it. Time to head for the death zone, the thin air, and the summit. Be here for this unprecedented television event. Live from base camp, Global Extremes Mount Everest 4 Runners of Adventure. Presented by Toyota. Monday, May 19th at 10 on OLN.
Global Extremes Mount Everest is brought to you by the all-new 4Runner. Larger, more powerful, more capable. And brought to you in part by Rolling Rock Beer. Grab a rock. And by Subway. Fresh-made sandwiches on fresh-baked bread. And by Moonstone Mountain Equipment.
Welcome back to our studio here at the base of Mount Everest. Now, Conrad, as we wrap up our preview show, if you can, summarize for me what it's going to be like for our climbers and what it's going to take for them to reach the summit.
For our climbers to make it to the top, they're going to need good weather, and this means a lack of wind. They're also going to be needing top physical and mental preparedness. And if they do make it to the top, when I was there, it was a dreamlike sense, and you really don't appreciate the magnitude of Everest till you get back down to base camp.
And hopefully they will all have that feeling within a very few short days. One final personal note from me, my co-host for most of Global Extremes, Darian Boyle, was unfortunately involved in a serious ski accident a few weeks ago. Darian, we just all want you to know that everyone here is thinking of you and wishing you a speedy recovery. Get well, girl. All right, we'll be bringing you reports daily on OLN as we approach Summit Day. Russell Bryce says our climbing window is only days away. We're excited because for the first time ever, we're going to have every step of the way from Camp 4 to the summit, close to 9 hours of continuous coverage. For more information, log on to olntv.com and yahoo.com/Global Extremes. On Summit Day, our coverage begins at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. The first ever televised ascent is coming soon. Make sure you're with us for the culmination of Global Extremes Mount Everest, 4 Runners of Adventure, and the adventure of a lifetime. Only on OLN. For Conrad Anchor, Pete Whitaker, and Sam Posey, as well as Pete Athens and Kirsten Gum, I'm Craig Hummer. So long, everybody.